Hey gang, so I had my first book signing for King of the Forgotten Darkness this past Saturday at the Barnes& and Noble in Billings, Montana. It was a blast, and I got to meet a ton of great fantasy fans who were really excited to get a signed copy. I I feel great. I had a lot of fun, and I was just so glad to be able to share my story and my love for fantasy fiction. I met a lot of really interesting people from all walks of life. It was just plain fun. I was actually at the store there for quite a while, just kind of vibing and signing. But I am a practicing psychiatrist, and I can't turn off my training. Now, it doesn't mean I was diagnosing anybody or anything like that. Although I had one person come up and kind of share her life story with me and her diagnosis and tell me a lot about her personal journey, and I was really grateful for that. But for the most part, I have been trained like we all psychiatrists are, to take note of the way people carry themselves and the way they dress and the way they behave, because it might be helpful to understand kind of what their life experience is about. Now, I wasn't there to be a shrink or psychoanalyze anybody. I was off the clock. So, nevertheless, I was there to have fun, and I did. But I couldn't help noticing a couple of interesting things. During the course of the day, I started trying to figure out if the next person who walked in the door might be interested in my novel, or if they might not want to take a look at it. After all, I was there to talk to people who might be interested and let other people shop in peace. I don't know about you, but if I go into a store and I have people chasing me down and asking me a million questions, I hate that. I hate that, and I was never going to be like that. I didn't get up and chase anybody. But if they came in, I was like, I wonder if this person might be interested in this. So rather than like chase anybody down, I came up with some kind of interesting observations. So you might be asking, can Dr. G use his psych training Jedi mind trickery to figure out who might like their novel? Well, the short answer of this is probably not. However, in science, of course, we talk about anecdotal evidence. Now, what is that? That's just offhand observations that you might notice. You might see a pattern, but a lot of times it's not all that great. Um, so all of what I'm about to talk about here is that I tabulated in a percentage format as judged by a bunch of numbers that I made up off the top of my head. And here's some things that I noticed in no particular order. For one, majority of fiction buyers seem to be female. Now, that's something that actually there's quite a few YouTubers out there talking about these days. And there's a lot of theories, like, guys aren't really interested in fiction anymore because there's not a whole lot of stuff that's written for them specifically. Other people say, well, no, they're all just more interested in playing video games than reading, and so they don't really read that much. Other people say, well, the it's all romantasy these days, and guys aren't super into that, so blah blah blah. I did notice, particularly in the first half of the day, that it seemed like there was more women buying the books, but then later on, I ran into a lot of guys who were interested. So I don't know. I don't know what to make of that. But I did notice, as far as like the women that were walking in the door, if they had pink hair, my chance went up by about 35%. Nose rings, 15%. A lot of tattoos, I'd say about 10% per tattoo. Torn up clothing gave me a 22% bonus. And if they were goth, 44%. Yeah. But that was the younger crowd. If they were school teachers, that was definitely a plus 23% buff. Grandmothers looking for something fun for their teenage grandkids, 31%. Absolutely. Now, of course, all those percentages are just pure made up bullshit. Definitely take it with a grain of salt because I'm not being serious. And against this so-called evidence, I actually signed quite a few copies to women who didn't prefer any of those sort of fashion choices. Just reading lovers. So, yeah, so much for that prediction. What about the dudes, though? Well, the dudes are a little bit easier. Ball cap, minus 45%. Sunglasses, minus 15%. If they had a ball cap and they had sunglasses on it, 100% chance that they were not interested. However, if they had all black clothing, 25% buff. Yeah, a sports jersey cost me 50%, but that was men and women too. If the guy had bangs in his eyes, I got a 60% bonus odds. A collared shirt, however, cost me 30%, and a tucked-in shirt was 40% reduction in percentage. If you had a tucked-in collared shirt, I was totally out. And if the dude was super jacked, that usually cost me about 25%. I mean, those guys were probably after military history, fitness, or memoirs. There's nothing wrong with that. But probably fantasy wasn't their cup of tea. Of course, there's plenty of counterexamples to that, so it's just pure nonsense. I mean, look at Henry Cavill, for example. A guy's jacked for days. If he'd have walked into my store and I didn't know who he was, I totally would have thought I didn't have a chance with him. So, not very useful. However, for guys who had any kind of graphics on their t-shirt, and this also applied to women too, although it seemed like to me that men wore t-shirts with stuff on them more often. But again, that's not a real observation. That's just like an impression. But if it was anything anime or Pirates of the Caribbean or Star Wars, obviously Harry Potter, Lord of the Rings kind of stuff, that gave me a 50% buff. Now, if anybody, regardless of gender, if they had manga tucked under their arm, I was totally in. Manga lovers love fantasy after all. Now, I'm just having fun here, but I think the reason for some of these so-called observations is that fantasy fans are colorful. They like imagination. They love imaginative stuff. And so a lot of these folks, not all of them, but some of them like to wear it loud and proud and say, why not? I get it. After all, I mean, I've got tattoos. I've watched Demon Slayer. I have lots of nerdy t-shirts and all that kind of stuff. I've got a Lord of the Rings poster in my office. And now, as an aside, I do like military history. So this is all just me making a bunch of silly anecdotal observations. So there you go. So what's up next? Honestly, man, I cannot wait to do this again. This was so much fun. And I'm sure that my next book signing will completely disprove all of those silly percentages that I just made up. And I'm totally here for it. People are just wildly diverse creatures after all. And I'm right there in the mix, of course. So if you're interested, though, and I'll be putting this on my website too, my next book signing will be on July 12th of this year in Louisville, Kentucky at the Hurstbourne Barnes & Noble. I'll be there from noon to 4, and I hope to see you there. And just for fun, make sure you're wearing something completely outrageous. The wilder, the better. Hope to see you there. All right, gang. I'll see you later.